Is this what you want?
Is this what you want? The question echoed across heaven, not shouted, not angry, but heavy. Every angel froze. Because God was not speaking to humanity. He was not speaking to the nations. He was speaking to one being. Lucifer, the most radiant angel ever created, now stood before the throne, not in worship, but in defiance. Something had happened. A thought had crossed the line. A declaration had been made. A throne had been imagined. And God, who sees pride before it speaks, responded. But what did he say? Did he warn him? Did he remind him who gave him his beauty? Did he offer mercy one last time? Or was this the moment heaven realized that even perfection can choose rebellion? Tonight, we step into that moment. The silence before the war, the conversation before the fall, the words spoken between creator and creation, before light became darkness. And as we uncover what God told Lucifer, ask yourself, if someone that close to God could fall, what does that say about the human heart? Stay with me, because this wasn't just the fall of an angel, it was the birth of pride. Lucifer did not bow. That was the first sign. In heaven, worship was not forced. It was natural, like breathing, like light shining. Every created being responded to God's presence instinctively. Reverence wasn't commanded, it flowed. But on this day, something felt different. The music that once seemed woven into Lucifer's very being had gone quiet. He stood before the throne, radiant, adorned, still breathtaking in beauty. But there was tension in the air. The angels sensed it. Heaven sensed it. And God spoke, not with thunder, not with rage, but with sorrow.
You were perfect in your ways from the day you were created.
The words moved through eternity like a ripple across still water. Perfect, not flawed, not broken, not mistreated. Perfect. Imagine hearing that from the Creator himself. You lack nothing, God continued. No gift was withheld from you. No honor denied. I placed you where you are. Lucifer's jaw tightened. Because this wasn't an accusation, it was a reminder. And sometimes reminders cut deeper than rebukes. Have you ever been reminded of who you used to be? Of how pure your intentions once were? Of how gratitude slowly turned into entitlement? God wasn't exposing a crime. He was exposing a shift. Until, God said quietly, iniquity was found in you. Found, not planted, not forced. Found. That word changes everything. Evil did not invade Lucifer. It emerged from within him, and heaven felt the weight of it. Lucifer finally spoke. His voice was still smooth, still melodic, but there was steel underneath it now.
I have only desired what is possible.
The angels stirred. Possible? Lucifer continued. You made me brilliant. You made me powerful. You placed me above many. You allowed me to see your glory. Why give me sight and expect me not to see higher? There it was. Not hatred, ambition, but ambition without surrender. God did not interrupt him, and that silence, that terrifying, patient silence, filled the throne room.
Why should worship rise to you alone? Why should the throne belong to one when others shine?
He wasn't shouting, he was reasoning, and that's what made it dangerous. Because rebellion rarely begins with screaming. It begins with justification. God's response was not defensive, it was revealing. You mistake proximity for equality. The words were calm, unshaken. I created your light. You reflect my glory. You do not generate it. And that sentence struck like lightning without thunder. Lucifer's wings shifted slightly. For the first time, something flickered in his expression. Not fear, but resistance. God continued, you were lifted because you carried my presence well, but your heart has begun to trade stewardship for ownership. Let that sink in. Stewardship for ownership. How often does that happen? You're given something to manage. A gift, a platform, influence, beauty, and slowly you begin to feel like it belongs to you. Lucifer's brilliance had become his identity, and now it was becoming his justification. You say I reflect. Lucifer replied slowly. But reflection still shines. Yes, God said gently. But it depends. That word echoed. Depends. Reflection depends on a source. Cut it off, and it fades. Lucifer knew that, but pride was already rewriting logic. I will ascend, Lucifer declared more firmly now. I will rise above. I will establish a throne. I will be like the Most High. The angels gasped, not because the words were loud, but because they were final. 5 declarations, 5 I wills. And in each one, God's will was removed. The throne room felt heavier now. This was no longer a misunderstanding. This was a decision forming in real time. God looked at him, not with fury, but with heartbreak. You desire my position, he said, but you do not understand my burden. That sentence froze the atmosphere, because Lucifer had seen the glory, but he had never carried the weight. He had seen worship, but never judgment. He had seen power, but never the responsibility of sustaining existence itself. Authority without submission, God continued, destroys the one who holds it. And here is where the tragedy deepens. Lucifer was not ignorant. He understood. He simply refused to yield. Have you ever known you were wrong, but pride wouldn't let you step back? Have you ever doubled down, not because you believed it fully anymore, but because retreat felt like humiliation? This was that moment. Heaven waited. This was the pause, the space where repentance was still possible. God did not cast him out instantly. He reasoned, he explained, he revealed the consequences, which tells us something powerful. Even rebellion was given a chance to reconsider. Return, God said softly, not commanded, invited. Remember who you are. Imagine that. The creator of all things offering restoration to a being plotting against him. But pride had already matured. Lucifer's eyes lifted, not in worship, but in calculation. If I bow now, he said quietly, I will always wonder. And that was it. Not rage, not hatred. Curiosity weaponized by ego. He would rather fall chasing equality than remain in glory under authority. And in that choice, the fracture became irreversible. God's final words in this moment were not explosive. They were mournful. Then you choose separation. Not I cast you, you choose. Because love does not imprison, even in heaven. And that is where the shift began. Not with lightning, not with war, but with a heart that preferred self-exaltation over surrender. And the next chapter is where heaven responds, because Lucifer was not alone in his reasoning. And what God says next will determine the fate of more than one angel. The throne room did not erupt immediately. There was no instant lightning, no sudden expulsion. Instead, there was silence, the kind of silence that feels heavier than sound. Lucifer still stood there, radiant, unfallen, but something invisible had shifted. A line had been drawn, not across space, but across loyalty, and heaven felt it. Because influence does not disappear when pride begins. It multiplies. Lucifer was not an isolated angel. He was admired, followed, respected. His brilliance had drawn others close long before rebellion ever formed in his heart. And now, they were watching God, watching Lucifer, watching the tension between submission and self-exaltation unfold before their eyes. Have you ever seen someone charismatic begin to question authority, and suddenly others start nodding quietly? Rebellion is contagious when it sounds reasonable. Lucifer did not immediately storm out. He turned, not toward the exit, toward the hosts of heaven. His voice was calm, persuasive, controlled. Have you never wondered? He asked. He wasn't shouting accusations. He was planting questions. Why must glory flow in one direction? Why must brilliance exist only to reflect? Were we not created magnificent? The angels shifted. Some looked confused, some uncomfortable, some intrigued. Because here's the truth. Lucifer wasn't lying about their beauty. They were magnificent. They were powerful. They were radiant. But magnificence under authority is different than magnificence without it. God watched, not threatened, not insecure, but grieving, because this was no longer about Lucifer alone. This was about influence. Freedom includes choice, God said, his voice steady and vast. The words moved like a current through the atmosphere. I did not create servants without will. I created beings capable of love. And love by definition cannot be forced. That statement alone reveals something terrifying. Heaven was not programmed obedience. It was chosen loyalty. And now, loyalty was being tested. Lucifer's eyes flashed. You speak of love, he replied, but love does not demand surrender. God answered without hesitation. Love does not demand surrender. Truth does. That line landed like a weight, because surrender is not humiliation when the one you surrender to is the source of your existence, but pride twists surrender into weakness. Lucifer stepped forward slightly, not aggressively, confidently. If I ascend, he said, I do not destroy you. I simply rise. That was the deception. He wasn't presenting himself as a destroyer. He was presenting himself as an alternative, an addition, a new possibility. And alternatives are more dangerous than enemies. God's response was not defensive. It was revealing. You cannot rise beyond what sustains you. The atmosphere trembled slightly, not from anger, but from reality pressing against illusion. Everything you are, God continued, is upheld by my will, even now. Lucifer's wings flickered faintly. For a moment, just a moment, uncertainty passed across his expression. But pride had already crossed a threshold. And when pride matures, correction feels like insult. Behind him, whispers began, not loud but growing. Some angels looked at Lucifer with admiration, others with fear. And some, like Michael, stepped forward. Michael did not glow brighter than Lucifer. He did not outshine him in beauty, but there was something steady in him, unmoved, unimpressed. Who is like God? Michael said. It wasn't arrogance, it was clarity. Lucifer's jaw tightened. The question wasn't rhetorical, it was confrontational. Who is like God? Not in beauty, not in brilliance, not in rank, in essence? And the answer hung in the air, no one. But pride doesn't need truth to survive. It only needs agreement, and agreement was forming. Scripture later tells us a third of the angels would align with Lucifer. A third. Do you understand what that means? This wasn't a small disagreement. This was a fracture in heaven's harmony. God spoke again, not louder, but deeper. To follow him, he said, addressing the hosts, is to separate from me. There was no threat in his voice, only clarity, separation. That word carried weight, because separation from God wasn't a relocation. It was disconnection from the source of light itself. Lucifer turned back toward the throne one final time. Then let it be so, he said. No more persuasion, no more reasoning. The decision had solidified. And this is where the tragedy sharpens. God did not overpower him instantly. He allowed choice to complete itself. Have you ever noticed that God often lets decisions mature before consequences arrive? Because forced loyalty is not loyalty at all. The moment stretched. This was the last window, the last breath before action. Lucifer, God said, and this time he used his name fully. Not adversary, not enemy. Lucifer, light bearer. Your beauty was a gift. Your authority was entrusted. Your position was grace. But your heart has turned them into entitlement. The words weren't shouted. They were unveiled. And here is the heartbreaking part. Lucifer did not deny it. He embraced it. I will not bow, he said quietly. And with that, the temperature of heaven shifted, not physically, spiritually, because rebellion had now chosen permanence, and permanence demands response. The angels behind Lucifer stepped forward. Not all, but enough. Enough to confirm that influence had done its work. Michael stepped forward too, not to argue, but to stand. And that's when heaven realized something profound. This was no longer a conversation. This was a dividing line. And what happens next is not merely expulsion. It is the collision between pride and sovereignty. The air in heaven had never felt heavy before. Heaven was movement, harmony, radiance flowing without resistance. But now, there was resistance. Lucifer stood surrounded, not by chains, not by force, but by decision. A third of the angels behind him, Michael and the loyal host before him, and the throne above all of them. God did not rise in panic. He did not tremble. He did not defend his authority, because authority that must defend itself is already fragile. But this authority was absolute, and still, there was sorrow. Lucifer, God said one final time, not Satan, not adversary, Lucifer. Even now, God addressed him by the name that reflected who he was created to be, not what he was becoming. You have chosen self-exaltation over surrender. You have chosen independence over truth. You have chosen glory without obedience. The words were not accusations. They were conclusions. Lucifer lifted his chin slightly. There was no regret in his eyes now, only resolve. Then let creation witness what I become, he replied. That sentence echoed, not just defiance, competition. He wasn't just rejecting God. He was positioning himself against him. And that is when heaven trembled, not because Lucifer was powerful, but because pride had fully matured. God's voice deepened, not in anger, but in finality. You cannot remain where you no longer align. That was the sentence. Simple, devastating. You can no longer stay. Those words were not screamed. They were spoken like gravity. And immediately, something happened. The light around Lucifer flickered. Not extinguished, but destabilized. Because proximity to God had sustained a brilliance he now stood separated from. The angels behind him felt it too. A shift, a pulling. As if the very atmosphere of heaven was rejecting what no longer harmonized with it. Lucifer looked around, and for the first time uncertainty flashed across his face. He had imagined ascension. He had imagined rising. He had not imagined falling. Authority is not taken, God continued. It is given, and what is given can be removed. There was no thunderbolt thrown from the throne. The removal was spiritual before it became positional. Lucifer's covering, the stones, the radiance described in ancient scripture, began to dim. Not violently, but inevitably, like a star drifting too far from its sun. And here is the part many people misunderstand. God did not create Satan in that moment. Lucifer's own choice was transforming him. Identity was shifting because allegiance had shifted. Your desire to ascend, God said, will become your descent. The words were prophetic, not poetic, and suddenly, movement exploded. Michael stepped forward, sword ignited with divine fire. Who is like God? He declared again, this time not as a question, as a banner. And heaven responded. The loyal host surged forward, not chaotic, not frantic, but decisive. What followed was not a war between equals. It was the enforcement of order. Lucifer fought, not weakly, not fearfully. He was still magnificent, still powerful, still breathtaking in presence. But power disconnected from source is unstable. The clash shook realms, light against fractured light, radiance colliding with corrupted brilliance. And through it all, the throne remained unmoved. Do you see it? God did not step down to wrestle Lucifer. He did not engage in a duel. Because rebellion does not dethrone sovereignty, it exposes itself against it. Lucifer pushed upward, but upward no longer existed for him. The direction had reversed. What he called ascension became expulsion. And then, it happened. A tearing sensation across the atmosphere of heaven. Not fabric, authority. Lucifer and those who chose him were cast out. Not gently relocated, not reassigned, cast out. The word implies force, but the force was the natural consequence of misalignment. Jesus would later describe it like this. I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven. Lightning, brilliant, sudden, downward. The one who once carried light now fell as a flash of it. And as he fell, something changed permanently. His beauty twisted into intensity. His brilliance hardened into accusation. His name shifted from light bearer to adversary, Satan, the accuser, the opposer. But here is the most sobering part of all. He was not destroyed. He was removed. Because destruction is final, but removal allows consequence to unfold. As Lucifer descended into the realm prepared for separation, his final glance upward was not filled with regret. It was filled with strategy. If he could not take the throne, he would target what God loved. And that thought, that seed, would become humanity's test. But before we go there, pause for a moment. Think about this. Lucifer stood closer to God than any of us ever have. He saw glory directly. He witnessed perfection continuously. And still, pride convinced him he deserved more. So what protects us? What guards our hearts from subtle entitlement? Because the fall did not begin with hatred. It began with comparison. And comparison, left unchecked, becomes rebellion. Heaven returned to order. But it was not the same. A third of its brilliance was gone. The harmony had been tested, and loyalty had been chosen. The throne remained, unshaken, unthreatened, unmoved, because sovereignty is not fragile. Heaven was silent again, not the tense silence from before, not the fractured silence of rebellion, but a restored stillness. Order had returned. The throne remained. Worship resumed. But something had changed forever. A lesson had been written into eternity. And that lesson was not about power. It was about the heart. Because when Lucifer fell, God did not change. Lucifer did. The throne did not weaken. Pride did. And here's the question that should disturb us. If a being that stood in direct glory could still desire more, what does that say about us? Lucifer saw God face to face. He witnessed authority firsthand. He experienced beauty without limitation. Yet it wasn't enough. Why? Because pride doesn't measure what it has. It fixates on what it doesn't control. And that is the thread connecting heaven's rebellion to earth's temptation. Think about it. When humanity was created, what was the lie whispered in Eden? You will be like God. The same ambition, the same suggestion, the same fracture. Lucifer couldn't ascend to the throne, so he redirected the ambition into humanity. If he could not dethrone God, he would distort those made in God's image. And suddenly, the final conversation between God and Lucifer becomes personal. Because what God told Lucifer wasn't just a warning for angels. It was a revelation about reality. You cannot rise beyond what sustains you. You and I are sustained. Every breath, every opportunity, every gift. And the moment we believe we are self-made, we echo the beginning of the fall. Let me ask you something deeply uncomfortable. Have you ever resented someone above you? Have you ever felt overlooked? Have you ever thought, I deserve more than this? That thought, left unchecked, grows roots. Lucifer didn't fall in a day. He drifted in thought first. That's why this story matters. Because pride rarely announces itself as evil. It presents itself as ambition, as self-belief, as independence. And independence sounds strong until it disconnects from truth. But here's the most powerful part of this entire narrative. God did not create robots. He created beings capable of choice. Lucifer chose separation. Humanity was given choice too. And unlike Lucifer, we were given something he was not: redemption. Think about that. Lucifer was cast out. But when humanity fell, God stepped down. The one Lucifer tried to equal humbled himself. That alone shatters pride. Philippians tells us that Jesus, being in the form of God, did not consider equality with God something to grasp, but humbled himself. Lucifer grasped upward. Christ stepped downward. One said, I will ascend. The other said, not my will. Two choices, two outcomes. One fall, one salvation. And that contrast should stop us in our tracks. Because the real question isn't, how could Lucifer fall? The real question is, what direction is my heart leaning? Toward surrender or self-exaltation? Toward gratitude or entitlement? Toward trust or comparison? The final words God spoke to Lucifer were not fueled by rage. They were fueled by truth. You can no longer stay. Because alignment matters. You cannot dwell in light while choosing darkness. You cannot carry glory while rejecting the source. And here's the sobering beauty of it all. The throne was never threatened. Lucifer's rebellion did not shake God's sovereignty. It only revealed the unshakable nature of it. So what do we take from this? Not fear, not paranoia, awareness, humility, gratitude. Because the same God who allowed Lucifer to choose allows us to choose daily. And the invitation still stands. Return, surrender, align. This story ends with a fall, but it also ends with a throne that never moved. And that throne still stands today, uncontested, unchallenged, unshaken. So as you close this video, ask yourself one final question. If pride once rose in heaven, what am I doing to guard my heart on earth? Because the fall didn't begin with war, it began with a thought, and thoughts shape eternity.